Vandegeest-Wallace. I'm a psychologist and sex therapist at KU Medical Center. So I thought maybe we should start today describing what that means, because people take that a lot of different places. So just so you know, what that entails is after I finished my PhD work and became a psychologist, then I did hundreds of extra hours of work around sexuality. So I could help people figure out what to do. The reason I got started on that path is when I was in graduate school and first started seeing clients, I'd have one person after another person after another person who would say to me, "I've never told anyone else this, but I need to tell you this story about what happened." And it was always then followed by sexual trauma or sexual dysfunction or something in the world of sexuality. And as that happened, I realized very quickly that people were telling me stories about how their soul was being wounded. Because our sexuality and our souls are very, very intimately connected. And when I realized the work I was really getting into was soul work, I decided I better know what I was doing. And that's where I really, really got invested in all the training and all the conferences and all the supervision I could receive so I could go out and really support people on that journey. So that's how I went down the path of becoming a sex therapist. Just so you know, I don't touch people. I get that question on a regular basis in my office, and that is not what I do. But sexuality is extremely complex, so sometimes we need a partner in the room who can really help us tease out all the complexities and help us find the most pleasure and most joy and most connection possible. So the other thing that I feel I really want to share with you, since you're a group that has had some medical hits along the way, my husband went through an 8-year battle with cancer. So I have a really unique perspective as being able to be a caretaker for him through his medical experiences, medical trauma. So we did lose my husband in 2015, and I'm happy. I'm an open book. I'll talk about any part of that process if you have questions. I am engaged again to a very sexy man. So I'm really excited about that. We're getting married on June 6th. And I believe, every cell of my body believes that my husband brought him to me, into my place. So he was a perfect fit. I would start putting in an order. Mark told me before he died, "I will bring you a new partner." So when I was ready to start dating, I started ordering up some, tool belts are really sexy, Mark. You think you can find me a guy with a tool belt? Like the boys love to hunt. Can't you find a guy who hunts? This guy's got a deer camp. He owns 100 acres southeast of Kansas City. Like, I don't think I can sit on another ball bench and watch another baseball game. I gotta have a guy who's got grown kids. His youngest graduated high school 2 weeks after we met. It's just like one thing after another. So I'm sure my husband had a hand in that. But I wanted to share that information so you know, have a really intimate experience, like really intimate in all the intimate ways it can be, with supporting somebody who's had some health knocks along the way. And I'm happy to share with you how we regained our sexual experiences together. So today, I could have presented a PowerPoint presentation, but when I talk to groups about sexuality, that never makes sense to me. And I'm going to tell you why. So I'm going to use a sex analogy because I'm a sex therapist, okay? So if I come in here and I put up all this research and all this information up here and I'm talking at you about all this knowledge that I have, then I'm telling you what I know and what I need to have happen in this moment. And that would be like if you and I had a sexual exchange and I walked into the room and I just did my thing and I made sure I had my pleasure and then I walked out. That would be crappy sex. So instead, what I really want to do is make sure that your sexual questions, your sexual needs, your struggles, we actually address them. So you get to leave this experience today having some solutions, having some validation, having some greater understanding, finding ways to step over the hump and get back to the pleasure that you had before the stroke occurred. Can you do that with me today? Okay. So that means you're going to have to talk out loud. can't just talk in your head. You can't ask the questions in here because I won't hear them. So I really need you to have a voice so we can have an intimate exchange and you get your need met. Does that make sense to everybody? I will tell you what I know, and that is the research shows and my clinical experience shows that every single person, 100% of people who've had a stroke, who've had cancer, who are diagnosed with MS, who are diagnosed with Parkinson's, like any of those big, heavy medical hitters, 100% have a negative impact to their sexuality. Yeah, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, so start throwing out some information to me. I gave you something, you gotta give me something back. That's how I have sex, right? So if I give you this information that 100% of people have a negative impact to their sexual experience, what are some of the ways that we get impacted? What have you noticed? Or what has your neighbor noticed? What has your friend noticed? Has anyone noticed a change in their desire? Oh, good. Did someone say?
Yeah. Well, mine wasn't that. I changed the desire. I wanted more.
Okay.
But I felt very inadequate because it felt like I couldn't move. I couldn't do what I used to do. So I felt very inadequate about myself.
So she's saying that she felt really inadequate, like her body couldn't move like it used to. Things were different. And just to really validate that for you, 2 weeks ago, I spoke at Gilda's Club with a group of cancer survivors, and one of the women in the group said the exact same thing. She said, I'm so tired, my body hurts, and I can't move it in an erotic way that I used to move it. So my confidence is shot, and I feel inadequate. Yeah? That feeling of inadequacy is something that I hear over and over and over again. The way that that played out with my husband is he would say, I'm supposed to take care of you. That's my job. When I put that ring on your finger, that's what I signed up for. And now, I feel like I'm failing you. So I don't have the ability to take care of you the way I did. Can anyone else relate? Just shake your head if you can relate to that feeling of inadequacy. Is that something you struggle with on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Can you say more about that? Do you feel comfortable with us, or?
You want to be a good and very good.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah. Okay. So she's saying, I'm going to repeat what he says, just to make sure it gets her. So she's saying she wants to be not just good, she wants to be very good. And what it's feeling like is it's just, compared to what it used to be. Yeah, and that takes a lot to psychologically adjust to, right? Because we end up feeling a little bit worthless. Yeah. And there's something about sexuality that sexuality is actually inviting a partner literally into us, right? Or we are entering another person. And when we're sharing that much of ourselves and we're sharing that intimate, that intimate of exchange, we gotta feel pretty darn good about what we got to offer. Otherwise, we hit the mute button and we just dial it down. Right? Have any of you experienced that where you just feel like your libido is just tanked? And you know what the research says? I do. What do you have to say?
I had no desire, and then it came back every time.
Eventually the desire came back. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what the research shows is that everybody experiences decreased desire, but it's not just the person who had the medical situation, it's also their significant other. And what I find in my office is that gets really twisted up in people's heads. So when I tell you that it might not just be you, but it also might be your partner that has a shift in their desire, what's the first thing that goes through your head? They don't want you.
That's what I felt. Mine was different. I felt like, what do you mean? You know, I am well, you know, and I felt like mentally, I felt like I could do it until finally he gave in and I realized I cannot do anything.
Yeah.
And so, that's where the inadequacy came in because mentally I thought that I could still do everything I could do.
Yes.
And then feeling like, oh, you don't want me anymore.
Right. Right. So for those of you who may not be able to hear what she's saying is that, you know, her sex drive really took off and it almost sounds like you were looking for validation, like, I'm normal, right? Like, I'm okay, right? And I'm going to pursue you sexually so you can validate that I'm still good. But he was the one who was saying, like, back off, girl, like, hold up, like, you got some healing to do. And so you experienced that as rejection. Like, oh, he must not want me. I cannot tell you the number of couples that have sat on the couch in my office and had that exact same discussion of, I'm afraid you don't want me because you're not pursuing me sexually. And 100% of the time, the partner says that is not true. 100%. I've never had someone go, she right, not ever once. But instead, they say things like, I'm afraid that I will hurt her or him. Okay. I'm afraid that he's so tired already. I don't want to put this extra burden on him. I think my partner needs a lot of energy to heal, so I don't want to take that energy because it feels selfish. It feels like I'm just trying to get my need met. Right? Does that make sense as you hear me saying that? Yeah, what are some of the other reasons that partners might dial down their sexuality? Not because they don't want you, because that is not a true statement.
Well, I know, just holding my husband's hand with my right hand, I couldn't feel it when I first had this stroke.
It was numb.
Yeah, my entire right side has been getting my feeling back from my toes to my head. And so it's been a constant changing experience the whole way. With everything, just holding hands. Just him tapping me, look at this commercial, just everything.
So you're actually tapping into something. I'm gonna talk about this in some of the psychologists. I'm gonna talk about a lot of psychology as you bring these things up. So as a partner and as you, it becomes really, really difficult to feel sexually competent and confident. You don't know what your body's capable of right now. You don't know where your limits are. You don't know what's gonna feel good. You don't know what's not gonna feel good. So that's gonna make us, and your partner, in your case, your husband, he sure as heck doesn't know.
Well, it's constantly changing. What worked yesterday won't work today, or the other way around. You know?
So because we're talking about that, I'm going to go ahead and jump to one of the interventions that I use in my office every week. And it's really, really impactful. Okay? So what it is, it's a massage. So we start with a hand massage with our clothes on. With lights on, you can have the TV on, you can open a bottle of wine, you can do whatever you want to do to set up this hand massage. But the hand massage ends up being really, really critical because the exercise is designed to help you learn what does it feel like to be touched, what do I like, what don't I like, how can I communicate that out loud to my partner, and whether you've had a stroke or not, we are not learning this skill set in our society. How many of you feel like somebody taught you somewhere along the way how to say, I like it when you touch me like that, don't touch me like that anymore, a little faster right over here, buddy. How many of you learned that skill set along the way? Exactly 0 hands went up, which is the answer I always get. We don't learn that skill set. But when we've had something like a stroke and our body's changing, and we've got to figure out in our own skin what feels good again, and we have to teach our partner what feels good so they don't have to be afraid of us anymore, then it becomes really critical to start having these conversations. So we start with something like a hand massage because that's not threatening. If we started with a clitoral massage, that would be really threatening, right? So we start with something safe that's not a sexual touch. And we practice saying, I like that. a little bit, harder on that spot right there. Ooh, don't touch my fingernails, that freaks me out. Can you move to my wrist? I think that would feel really good. Yesterday I had a couple in my office and they decided to try this hand massage in my office because they hadn't been able to do it outside my office. And as they were doing it, she's an epilepsy, she has a recent diagnosis of epilepsy and has seizures with her orgasms. And so really threatening to have any kind of sexual touch, really, really scary because we don't want to go to that spot, right? So she was doing the hand massage and she was able to communicate for the first time. And I think I'm done with that. My hand's starting to feel numb. Never in her life had she given somebody the message of I think I'm done with that touch right now. Do you understand how powerful that is? So she started to build confidence in her own ability to know her body. Some of the touch felt really good, which surprised her. Some of the touch she didn't like. And she also was able to set a limit when it was too much and when she was done. So if you think about stroke recovery and how vital each of those pieces becomes, I like that touch, I don't like that touch, I think my body's had enough. A simple little hand massage becomes a really critical intervention. Yeah. I see a lot of heads shaking like that makes sense. Tell me more of your thoughts. So why does that make sense?
Well, like with me, my life has changed a lot.
Yes.
And I got a fear in there because I got married a week before my stroke.
Oh boy, that's a tough.
And so
time.
my whole life changed. So when my first wife passed away. 4 years later, I get married again. And a week after I get married, I have a stroke. And there's fear because, okay, we're newlyweds, and now this happened, and my whole perspective has changed. And like you said, there's things I don't like that I used to.
Yeah.
And then she gets the feeling, well, I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. And she becomes insecure.
And then she and it's, it's a bad thing.
Yeah. So essentially what I hear you saying, John, is that you're not the same person you were before.
Not even.
Not even close. And so now you're in the process of learning yourself, and she's in the process of learning you. And there's a lot of fear and insecurity that gets bubbled up.
Oh, yeah. A lot of fear.
Yeah. So when I say, like, well, let's back it up a little bit here, man, and try this hand massage, and let's practice really hearing and responding and saying what we need and what we want, what we don't want, that seems to resonate.
Yeah, because, like right now, a lot of times, I'm exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And, and she said, well, you don't want it, and it's not that I don't, it's that I'm tired. And she don't understand it. Since I've had my stroke, I get tired.
Yeah, so he's saying that he gets tired now too, and a lot of times when he's really, really fatigued, his wife is interpreting that to mean that he's not interested in her, he doesn't want her. And he's saying that's not true. John says, I want my wife, but I'm also really tired and I haven't figured out a way to really navigate that fatigue well.
But I've tried it, I bring her flowers, I do all kinds of stuff to show her I still love her.
Yeah.
But
if you're not pursuing her sexually, she's not quite getting that message, is she?
nope.
Yeah. Yes.
I think what I hear, from patients and a therapist, relational therapist, and oftentimes this subject is not even brought up. But a few times in the past, it's one of the main questions is it safe? How do I know if it's safe? Because I think people worry about blood pressure, elevation.
That fear of having another stroke again, and yes. Okay, so one of the things, so what she was saying, I don't know if you could hear it or not, she was saying, she's a therapist, and one of the things that comes up over and over and over as she's working with folks is they're afraid. Like, well, I don't want my blood pressure to spike. What if my blood pressure spikes when I get really aroused? What if that sends me into another stroke? Yeah, I see again a lot of head shaking, like that's a fear that a lot of you are trying to navigate. Yes. Okay, so here's how I approach that in my office. We talk about, again, starting with touch that is an orgasmic response, and then we build very slowly back into that orgasmic response. So it may be we start with a hand massage, and then we go to when that feels really good and people feel confident, like they can move beyond that without fear. Then we might do a hand and arm and shoulder massage. Again, communicating the whole way, making sure we know what our body likes, where our limit's at. And it might be hand, arm, shoulder, back, and buttocks. Is that okay? Are we comfortable? Does that feel good? What part of that feels good? What doesn't? And we just keep inching along the way. And then eventually, we may include breasts and genitals. And then breast, genitals, and do we feel safe enough to reach that orgasmic response, that orgasmic plateau? So we never go from 0 to 100. We go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. And again, building that confidence, knowing our body, understanding what our body's confident and capable of each step of the way. And then by the time we get to that orgasmic response, people usually are really comfortable and okay. Does that make sense to you as a therapist? Okay. Yes?
So, I had some serious scarring, very large scars, and I feel like I'm ashamed or I'm uncomfortable with them.
We paused the program for a minute.
And you know, I don't want to like scare him or like I don't want him to be uncomfortable. So it's like, it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable.
Yes.
So
I'm going to tell you the very first thing that comes to my mind, and then you can challenge me on it. Okay, I really invite you to challenge me on it. So the very first thing that comes to my mind, you're making me think a lot about my cancer survivors who have mastectomies. And my office is at Quivira and 110th, I'm right next to the cancer center. So I get lots and lots of my breast cancer survivors and prostate cancer and all different kinds of cancer. But they come in, my women will come in, and they'll say, he's not going to love my scar, or she, depending on who their partner is. They're not going to be able to handle this. And over and over and over again, when we really boil it down, what we find is that the woman is really struck. She's projecting her own fear onto her partner, that she doesn't know how to sit with her own scars and be okay in her own skin quite yet. Is that, again, challenge me.
no,
Tell me I'm wrong.
100% true.
Okay. So what do we do with that? That's a good question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can, again, tell you what we do clinically in my office. And this is called, do you mind if I close that? I keep hearing stuff back there that's distracting me. I can't. You hear a little pitter patter, please don't wait for another little kid to come in. So what we really do, it's called cognitive behavior therapy. And what that is, if you go to talk to a cognitive behavior therapist, a lot of them will think that it means, well, just think positive thoughts. That's no. I'm just going to call BS and I do my BS like, right? It's not about just, thinking positive thoughts. You're not going to look at scarring and go, oh, look how beautiful and artistic that is on my body, or some craziness like that, right? But what I think is the most effective kind of cognitive behavior therapy is when we find a new truth. And multiple truths can exist in one space. So in one moment, you can look at the scarring on your body And you can say, my truth is that my body's not the same. My truth is that my body looks disfigured. And you can say, my truth is, I've got beautiful breasts. My truth is, I love the curve of my hips. My truth is, I can want and long for him and bring him pleasure and joy. My truth is, etc., etc., etc. Whatever your truth. I'm telling you my truth. Right? You gotta find your truth, and you'll know when you find them because your fear will be quiet. It'll still coexist. The scars will still be there, but it'll become a smaller part of you, and the other parts that the stroke couldn't touch, those parts will rise to the top. And they become really, really powerful. So, again, does that make sense when we think about finding those new truths? I don't want you to blow smoke. I don't do that.
I don't, no.
I'm not into that kind of therapy, right? So I want to make space for everything you've had to adjust to and the differences that your body is holding. And I also want to recognize that there are parts of you that are still beautifully intact and wonderful, and there are gifts that you can give that are priceless. Yeah. I saw another hand. Whose hand? Yeah.
What's your theory on pills?
What's my theory on pills?
Yeah.
You mean like Viagra or like blue pills?
I don't know if that maybe was something for women or not.
Like is there pills for women?
Yeah.
Okay, I do have thoughts about that. So there are a couple different.
I just wondered.
Yeah. There are a couple different options for women who have low libido. Is that what you're thinking of specifically?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, the same thing you did think of her.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So he's asking about what kind of medical options might there be for women. And so, we always think of the blue pill, Viagra, Cialis, those kinds of things for men. There are a couple options for women. They are not as good as our pills for men. This is the way our medical environment treats women. But one of them is called Addie. I'm going to tell you what the research shows. The research shows that if you have low desire and you take Addie and you have zero desire to have sex during the month, you might have sex one time after taking Addie every single day in the next month. And you have to sign a contract that says you will not drink alcohol. So that kills the mood right there. But you can't drink alcohol because it can cause you to faint. And so you don't want, after having a stroke, I'm pretty sure you don't want to have a regular heartbeat or anything. So, and I don't know the information about Addie and strokes, actually. So we would need to research that specifically. The other option, which we have better research on, better outcomes, is taking Wellbutrin, which is an antidepressant that affects the dopamine in our brain. And dopamine is that pleasure, hormone, or that pleasure neurotransmitter. Like, yay, let's have fun. Fun seeking. Right? And what we see with Wellbutrin is that women who are taking Wellbutrin typically want to have sex about 4 times a month. So on average, once a week. So you get better results. You can drink and take Wellbutrin. Right? So there's some better outcomes with Wellbutrin. Other questions that come to mind. Oh, I actually want to go back real quick to the fatigue. That idea that, man, I'm tired, I'm really tired. That's come up repeatedly. So when people talk about, I'm too tired to do this, thrusting anaerobic exercise that we call sex. Instead, what I talk to people about is how can we expand your definition of sexuality and make sure that we're including behaviors that are incredibly intimate, that don't take that same kind of energy. And we don't have to get our heart rate really pumping, so we don't have to have a lot of fear that we talked about, like is this safe? So I invite couples to create a really extensive list of how you might feel safe touching. And this is what I say. How are you going to feel safe touching your intimate partner in a way that you don't touch the Walmart checkout guy. Right? And so people will end up coming back with lists that include things like spooning naked, taking showers together and feeling that skin-on-skin contact, being sure to give really long hugs. There's some really impressive research about the impact on our body and on our psyche if someone gives you a 20-second hug. People talk about real kissing. Because how many of you noticed a shift in your kissing since you've had a stroke? How many people kiss less often? How many people have kissed less passionately? How many people have stopped kissing their partner? That's a really common report because of a fear. Well, if I get a little tongue action in on that kiss, they're going to think I want to go all the way. And I'm afraid of that still. So I'm going to stop it right here before we even kiss. So that's why I start in my office to help people expand their safety zone and expand their definition of what they can do sexually that doesn't overwhelm them and fatigue them, but makes them feel so close and connected to their partner. Another exercise I do with couples in my office on a regular basis comes from tantric sex. So tantric sex really combines intimate touch with spirituality. And I'll have them stand next to each other in my office and face one another and put their hand on each other's hearts. And then I ask them to really synchronize their breathing. And once their breath is synchronized, I ask them to make eye contact for 1 whole minute. And at the end of that minute, it's pretty amazing what people tell me. That didn't take a lot of energy. But after that 1 minute, people will tell me things like, I felt like I was standing at the altar saying my vows again. I feel like I just want to swallow this person up and be so close to them. That type of a response. You don't do that with a Walmart checkout guy, honey. So something like that, a different kind of touch that builds and increases that intimacy. Did I see your hand go up again?
Yeah, you were giving the definition of tantric. You said it combines two.
Right, so it's a sexual exercise, an intimate exercise, and a spiritual exercise at the same time. And that's where it ends up taking us to a deeper level and a more connected level. And when we've had a stroke or we've had any other medical crises, we feel often pretty dead inside. So doing an exercise like a tantric 1 minute exercise that pulls energy, positive, loving energy back up, makes us feel alive again. So I love that when people are really intentional about saying, okay, that stroke tried to kick me down. I'm going to find energy that pulls me back up. Yes?
I think what really helped me through this process, I've changed the way I ate personally.
Okay.
I became a vegan.
Okay.
Which helped me to lose weight. It gave me more energy. I'm still very fatigued. I wake up usually 3 o'clock in the morning, and so I'm up. And so sometimes throughout the day I'm tired. Because driving, I started driving. So a lot of ways I got my confidence back in a lot of other different ways. And I
really important things in what you just said, Amelia. So, on one hand, I heard you acknowledge the grief, the sadness. And I think that we have got to make space to grieve who we were, because if we don't do that, we can't step into creating a new version, Amelia 2.0, right? But you are doing that. You are creating her. You are finding power. Like, when strokes happen, we are powerless, right? They're just happening. What are we doing about that? We just then got to pick up the pieces. And then you said, well, I'm going to pick up those pieces and I'm going to put them just where I want it. Right? So I'm going to become a vegan. I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to hold a plank. Are you kidding me? I was struggling this morning at 4:30 in my home gym. Here you are, man, with a leg that does whatever it wants to do, and you're planking. Right? So you are finding your power, you're reclaiming yourself, and you are creating Amelia 2.0. And that is incredibly resilient. And when we talk about sexual resilience, you're on the right path.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you address, for those of us that don't have sexual partners, individuals without a partner,
Mm-hmm.
and who still have desire or concerns that you're speaking of?
So are you asking me, are there ways to be able to pleasure yourself, or are there other things?
Those of us that do not have partners.
Yeah. So if you don't have a social life, but you still have these sexual needs and desires, then what do we do? Whew. So that question comes up. Well, that question comes up on a regular basis. Again, 2 weeks ago when I was at Gilda's Club, this came up with some of my cancer survivors who were not partnered. I'm hesitating to answer it because I feel like it's a very value-laden response, right? So how you meet sexual needs as a single individual really has to match what your moral compass is, and we have to let that guide and direct. I think there are many, many avenues for claiming your erotic self, whether you have a partner or not. I mean, as a widow, I wasn't partnered for years, and so I would find my venues that made sense to me, that allowed me to say, I am still sexual, I'm still desirable, I still have erotic energy, I still can find pleasure in a way that made sense to me. So that's when I went, ooh, that's where I was thinking, is like, that is a value-laden question. But do you hear what I'm saying? That when you listen to your own internal compass,
I think there are so many of us that do not have a partner. We're single people in situations where you don't have social contact or socialization.
yeah. So the other thought that comes to my mind, and tell me if this makes sense or if this feels off to you in any way, okay? The other thought that comes to my mind is, prior to having a stroke, were you single before the stroke? However you were meeting your erotic and sexual needs prior to the stroke, are there ways for us to reclaim that post-stroke? Yeah. Well, I mean, if you were in my office, that would probably be one of the avenues we would start to explore. Because sometimes people tell themselves, there's this myth that happens in all of society that says, if we have had any kind of a debilitating experience, a car accident, a stroke, cancer, MS, all this, then that makes us asexual. And that is not a truth. And you know that in the very core of your being, that is not a truth. But sometimes we have to fight that myth in our own head in order to reclaim. It makes me think a little bit about a 16-year-old boy that I worked with who had had an ATV accident and broke his neck, and so he was paralyzed. And so his very wise father brought him to my office and said he thinks he's not a sexual person. And the tears rolled, what makes me cry thinking about it? As the tears rolled down his face, he said, I know that's not true. Can you help him? So we had to fight all those myths. As soon as he had his accident, he woke up and said, oh my God, I'm a virgin. I'm going to die a virgin. I'm never going to get laid. Not even true. Not even true. He's had more sexual partners than me at this point. he's finding his way. He found a path. Yes.
I wanted to say, because this might look a little bit, even at the beginning of my stroke of last year, December 18th, I was married. Well, my husband decided to leave me. We're in the middle of a divorce. And I cried because I felt like, man, who's gonna want me? I'm weird, I'm different, I don't walk the same, I can't do the same that I used to do. Who's gonna want me? Everybody can say, oh, you're beautiful, you're nice looking, you look like you have a stroke. But no one has to live in your body to know what you face every morning when you get up and open your eyes and get out that bed, and how hard it is to put on clothes, or just do normal things that used to be so easy, simple, 5-second things. And so I didn't never think that anybody would want me, ever, like, really want me, not just to have sex with me, but someone just to want me. And I'm gonna tell you that God sent me a friend in my life. And guess what? He understands me because he has children that have disabilities. And so, even though I felt the insecurity in myself, as she was saying, those mental things that we have to work through, like even coming to a place like this, you get to mingle, you get to meet people, conversation is important, we can't be afraid to say, hey, how you doing? Because you never know who is going to be a part of your life. And so, yes, you're single, you're still worthy, you're still important, you're handsome, you had a stroke, but you are still living. And I just say that because sometimes I get it. You feel someone else sees something in you, but you can't see it in yourself. But I don't know your name, sir, but there is someone definitely for you, someone for all of us, that'll love you just for you. No matter if you had a stroke, no matter what the situation is, I learned that because I didn't think anybody would really want me just to want me after my husband walked out on me for somebody else who never had a stroke. And to hear him call me a cripple, I never thought that would be something I had to go through in the face. But I choose to not allow that to stop me. And I just believe that no matter what's going on in our life, no matter what we face, we're still very sexual, as she said. We're still very important. We still can be loved. We can give love.
Yes. Amen. Amen to that. So, do you want me to repeat a little bit of that for the Facebook Live, or are we picking up on that? So, Miss Amelia, Miss Resilient Amelia over here, was saying that she has felt a lot of this internal conflict of, wait a minute, my husband walked out on me. My husband referred to me as a cripple, and I had to fight the demons in my head that started to believe him. And I said, no, I've got a lot to give. I've got a lot to offer. I might be different than I was before the stroke, but I am beautiful in so many wonderful ways. I'm paraphrasing Amelia, so she'll check me when I get it. And because she was able to do that and fight her own fears, so she was the one who started to put barriers in front of her that said, oh, no one's going to love me. Oh, no one's going to want me. I don't have any worth anymore. She said, hold up, I got power over these barriers. I'm going to, I'm going to kick right through them. And I'm going to be me because I have worth. And in doing that, God brought her a friend.
Amen.
A friend who really understood her, who sees her as beautiful and sexual and amazing. And
I was married for 14 years. I was married for 14 years. And I'm not sad. I was just like, I was married for 14 years. And my husband walked out on me. And when I tell you, this young man that God blessed in my life, when I tell you how amazing he is, that he loves me, but the time, how he cared about me, wanted to be my therapist, to learn how to help me. Amelia, you're going to walk right. Amelia, use your left hand. Amelia, why you're not using your left hand, Amelia? You know, my husband never did that for me. Only person who did that was my mom. And so to know that someone can come into your life, even if it's just going to be a friend, you know, I don't know where this is going to go. But even if it's just a friendship, that's better than any sexual relationship.
Right.
Because you have someone that you can talk to, someone who wants to understand you. You know, that's the best intimacy, especially I'm a woman. I can't speak for the men. But just having that quality time with someone who wants to get you and understand you, it feels really good.
Yeah. Sounds like Amelia's being seen. Or maybe it's some of the first times in her life, whereas someone says, I see you, right? I care about you. And that's really powerful and intimate.
Yes.
Yes. And I kind of think I know where it's going, girlfriend. We'll see. Yes. Was there another comment?
Yes, I'm a woman of a certain age, but before I had a stroke, I had thyroid storm, and I've had the menopause thing, and all that, and I guess I don't know if it's a myth or not, but at some point in your life, you're really not interested that much in intercourse. I don't know, because there's two different things I think you're talking about. But the intimacy, I've been married 31 years, and my husband, we have 2 bedrooms. Sometimes he's in chemo, and I'm suffering, stroke survivor. So when he's taking chemo, I let him sleep alone. But when he'll call me on the phone from his room.
From his bedroom?
And so I'll come and get more because it's probably cold in there or something like that. We cuddle, we hug, we cook, we do things together, and I find now in the second part that our relationship is even stronger because I think sometimes you can base relationships on sex.
Yeah.
And when that's gone, you don't have nothing left.
Yeah.
But when you have a relationship really based on caring for each other, that now we take care of each other. And
Yes.
on our anniversary, I had him cook. Well, he cooks the best, and I cook the best. And we had dinner, although we were both asleep by the time we got done. But I think sexual healing and intimacy, I think we kind of get that confused.
Yes.
And I think intimacy lasts long. It's a lot more important, and it's enduring. And when physically things go away.
Yes.
If I can still hug and kiss you and cook for you and enjoy you,
Yes.
I think that's just as important. I think sometimes we just don't, and you get a certain age, it don't matter no more.
Yes. So she's really distinguishing between intimacy and sexual intercourse.
Yes.
You know what's interesting about that is the research on MRIs that show you what's happening in your brain. The same things are happening if I'm holding somebody's hand or if I'm having thrusting intercourse. The same parts of my brain are lighting up. Like our bodies experience all of that as intimacy. So whether you're hugging, kissing, snuggling, snoring with each other on the couch after dinner, like your brain is receiving everything it needs to feel and experience, so you know you are connected to this partner in a really special way.
And I think the care you give each other is so much, it's so much more lasting.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I love it.
It helps you exactly what you're saying because like learning to feel again on my right side. What I feel today, what I didn't feel yesterday, maybe I felt next week, and it changes you. You're watching a movie, he's just playing with your hand. It makes you more open. It makes you more responsive.
Right.
Everything. So
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
So for you, having someone who is interested in rubbing your hand and stroking your arm, that has a new level of intimacy.
Yeah, it opens up more doors.
Opens up more doors.
Because you're like, what else can I feel? What else can I see? And it doesn't have to be sexual. It just has to be intimate.
Intimate.
Yes, there's there's a difference.
Yeah.
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 It may lead to the other, but I'm just saying, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, the phrase that's going through my head is like in a moment like that when you're sitting on the couch and your husband's like, oh, let me rub on you. And oh, well, rub here a little. Is that, am I going to feel that? Rub over here. Yeah. What you're talking about is my husband wants to see me. Like he is interested in me, not my vagina, right?
Right.
Like he wants to know me and understand me. And that has tremendous meaning.
Yeah, because a year and a half ago or whatever, he touched my arm when he was going by. I didn't even feel it. Now I feel it and it may jump or something. But it's like, ooh, can I feel it when he's there? Oh, ooh.
Yeah. Very good. Other thoughts or yes?
I do have a question. One woman that I was working with in therapy asked me the question. She said, "Is it normal to not have an orgasm after you have a stroke?" And I wanted to say, well, no, but I didn't really have that scientific,
Yes. So what the research shows, as long as the center of our brain that is responsible for that particular sexual functioning is not damaged with the stroke, there's no reason. But that's where that 100% of people have changes in their sexuality. Same thing. The same thing with cancer survivors. There's no organic reason why they can't have orgasms, but the number of women who come into me and say, I haven't had an orgasm for 3 years since my cancer treatment. I haven't had an orgasm in 2 years since my stroke. I haven't had an orgasm since my MS diagnosis. There's no brain reason why that's not happening. Typically what is happening is the psychological barricades. And those psychological barricades are many of the things we've talked about already. Like I feel worthless, I feel inadequate, I don't want to engage because someone's going to see me, experience me as broken. So they shut that down. So one other thing that we haven't talked about that can be a really great intervention to help wake that back up is actually acupuncture. Do any of you do acupuncture for stroke recovery and therapy?
I wanted to.
Y'all should be considering it. So also with the sexual function. So one of the people I refer to most often is an acupuncturist named Shemaine Tate. And she can help with low libido, she can help with orgasmic functioning, she can help with menopausal symptoms and vaginal atrophy that happens with that. She can help with, she's got it all going on, folks, right? She helps my guys with their erectile dysfunction, she helps, she specializes in that reproductive and sexual acupuncture. So it's pretty incredible. I've had people come into me and they reported it. I haven't had an orgasm in 3 years since my cancer treatment. They will go see her, leave her office, and get out their little vibrator at home and have their orgasm first time in 3 years. I mean, it's no joke. It almost feels unethical for me not to share her information with you. So keep that in mind too, that acupuncture might be a really great adjunct to what you're doing already with therapy. Other questions?
I think sometimes people leave or mess around and they start getting too much to do with it. It's just them, the way they are.
You think they leave?
Sometimes it's just cheaters don't ever get a stroke or not.
Oh, they're just cheaters or cheaters. Whether you had a stroke or not, they're gonna mess around. Yeah.
Talking about your partner, how they, some of us, not me, but some people saying that they, fear that their partner's gonna go see somebody else because they're not performing,
Yeah.
And that's what I think he's trying to say about the other person going out.
Yes.
They're a cheater, they're gonna go.
Yep. So I hear that in my office all the time. Right? Like I feel this urgency, feel this pressure to make sure I am sexually performing and meet my partner's sexual needs despite if I can feel part of my body or if I can be orgasmic or if I'm afraid or if I think having an orgasm might cause a stroke but they go ahead and they push through that because they don't want their partner to leave. Because we have this idea in our head that if they're not getting here, they're going to go get it somewhere else. And that puts a lot of pressure then on us.
It makes it harder.
Oh, 10,000 times harder.
It's all mental game thing anyway.
It's a big mental game. And it also keeps you from being able to be authentically you as a sexual person, because then what you're doing is you're becoming a performer. You're a little puppet on
Yeah.
strings, trying to be whatever the other person needs and wants, and you're not even part of the sexual narrative anymore. Okay, any other questions that are bubbling for you while you got me here? Let's get her done. Shemaine Tate. T-A-T-E. S-H-A-M-A-Y-N-E. Shemaine Tate. And she's located at like 75th and Schweitzer.
So when you were addressing my question, you mentioned moral. So what were you
Morals. Well, so our moral code. Sorry, I couldn't hear because of the wrestling.
Individual.
Yeah, so everybody's gonna have a sexual moral code. Our sexuality is very much like our thumbprint. Like mine is gonna look different than yours and hers and his and his and his. And that sexual moral compass is developed in each of us by things like messages we receive from our family, our mother and father, our siblings, our abuse histories, our church messages that we receive, whatever happened in the Boy Scouts, whatever, right? I mean, there are a million different ways in which our sexual moral compass is developed, and it's so unique and individual. I mean, an example would be for some people, and like I will have couples that come in and they watch porn together as part of their sexual play. And I have other couples that walk in my door that any type of porn is infidelity and that is cheating. We can't possibly do that, right? And that's just an example.
Yeah.
Pardon? I can't.
Or the individual with masturbation.
Yeah, so for some people, I have had a number of folks who come in my door and they've learned, particularly, it seems to be within some church settings, they'll get messages like, well, here's a really concrete example. I had a client walk in my door and say, from the pulpit, my priest said that masturbating was raping the Holy Spirit because the Holy Spirit lives inside of us and cannot give us consent. So that person was tortured and felt like, I really want to explore myself sexually and build some confidence, but I can't because I will go to hell. Right? So that moral compass, that moral code, that sexual thumbprint was really shaped. Or paying for sex. Right, and that's not like, in some countries, the government gives an allowance for people with disabilities to go in and have prostitutes once a month because they see it as part of sexual health, as part of overall health, and it's really, really vital and important. That's not happening in Kansas or Missouri, folks. We're not going to have that fund in the United States. But it's normalized within those other cultures. It's not normalized here. So that's our sexual thumbprint.
I think that's a problem. They try to make normal things abnormal. And like Grace telling you that that's a problem with all the controversy around that particular tradition.
I could have a 2-day conference just about the messages I've heard in my office from different resources. But that's why you have to follow what feels right and okay to you. And if it feels right and okay for you, then go for it. If it doesn't feel right and okay for you, if you have some kind of guilt or struggle internally, then we're trying to make different choices. Angelia Cheek? No, she's not. All right. Any other thoughts or questions before we wrap up for today? All right. I really appreciate your willingness to engage and talk and share your questions and experiences. Hopefully, we walked away from today actually meeting your needs and getting information that you long for.